So, and I just want to say that it's on Dr. Seuss's Sneetches. And in 1961, he wrote Sneetches. The earliest works that they've discovered started in 1953. And so from 1953 to 1961, he developed it. And it was written to address how different groups of people didn't like each other during World War II. And to highlight how easily the masses are persuaded to be judgmental of others. And I used to read it to my kids when they were little. My youngest is now 28. And I think there's a lot of relevant messages in it today. So thank you all for being here. And whenever you're ready, Ron, we can get started, please. Okay. So now the star belly Sneetches have bellies with stars. The plain belly Sneetches had none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small, you might think such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But because they had stars, all the star belly Sneetches would brag, we're the best kind of Sneetches on the beaches. With their snoots in the air, they would sniff and they'd snort. Will have nothing to do with the plain belly sort. And whenever they met some, when they were out walking, they'd hike right on past them without even talking. When the star belly children went out to play ball, could a plain belly get in the game? Not at all. You only could play if your bellies had stars, and the plain belly children had none upon theirs. When the star belly Sneetches had Frankfurter roast or picnics or parties or marshmallow toast, they never invited the plain belly Sneetches. They left them out cold in the dark of the beaches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them year after year. Then one day it seems, while the plain belly Sneetches were moping and doping along on the beaches, just sitting there wishing their bellies had stars, a stranger zipped up in the strangest of cars. My friends, he announced in a voice clear and keen, my name is Sylvester McMonkey McBean, and I've heard of your troubles. I've heard you're unhappy, but I can fix that. I'm the fix-it-up chappy. I've come here to help you. I have what you need, and my prices are low, and I work with great speed, and my work is 100% guaranteed. Then quickly, Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine. He said, you want stars like a star belly Sneetch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each. Just pay me your money and hop right aboard. So they clambered inside, and the big machine roared, and it clonked and it bonked, and it jerked and it burped, and it bopped them about, but the thing really worked. When the plain belly Sneetches popped out, they had stars. They actually did. They had stars upon theirs. Then they yelled at the ones who had stars at the start. We're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're all just the same now and snooty old smarties. And now we can go to your Frankfurter parties. Good grief, groaned the ones who had stars at the first. We're still the best Sneetches and they are the worst. But now how in the world will we know? They all frowned. If which kind is what, or the other way round. Then up came McBean with a very sly wink, and he said, things are not quite as bad as you think. So you don't know who's who. That's perfectly true. But come with me, friends. Do you know what I'll do? I'll make you again the best Sneetches on beaches. And it and all it will cost you is $10 eaches. Belly stars are no longer in style, said McBean. What you need is a trip through my star off machine. This wondrous contraption will take off your stars so you won't look like Sneetches who have them on theirs. And that handy machine worked very precisely, removed all the stars from their tummies quite nicely. Then with snoots in the air, they paraded about and they opened their beaks and they let out a shout. We know who is who now, there isn't a doubt. The best kind of Sneetches are Sneetches without. Then, of course, those with stars all got frightfully mad. To be wearing a star now was frightfully bad. Then, of course, old Sylvester McMonkey McBean invited them into the star off machine. Then, of course, from then on, as you probably guess, things really got into a horrible mess. All the rest of that day, on those wild, screaming beaches, the fix-it-up chappie kept fixing up Sneetches. Off again, on again, in again, out again. Through the machines, they raced round and about again. Changing their stars every minute or two, they kept paying money, they kept running through, until neither the plane nor the star belly knew whether this one was that one, or that one was this one, or which one was what one, or what one was who. Then when every last cent of their money was spent, the fix-it-up chappie packed up and he went. And he laughed as he drove in his car up the beach. They never will learn. No, you can't teach a Sneetch. But McBean was quite wrong, I'm quite happy to say, that the Sneetches got really quite smart on that day. That day they decided that Sneetches are Sneetches, and no kind of Sneetch is the best on the beaches. That day all the Sneetches forgot about stars, and whether they had one or not upon theirs. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. There's so in the original illustrations, Nazi Germany is clearly represented. Sylvester McMonkey McBean looks like Hitler. And it's not in the illustrations that you see in the books here in America, but in the original illustrations. Japan is also recognized because he also had slanty eyes and a pulled up pig type nose, and he looked Asian. And Dr. Seuss was a political cartoonist who wrote children's books. And you know, I see a lot of ways that this message is relevant today. I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts on how it might be relevant today. Just unmute yourself and speak. It's not a large crowd, right?
Well, it seems incredibly relevant today. Discrimination seems very prevalent, and it's unfortunate that we still have too many Sneetches in the world, and they think there's certain superiority and all of that, and wanting segregation and certain groups and calling out groups and stuff. And yeah, it's discouraging to me that so much time has elapsed since some of these concepts were really brought to the forefront, and it kind of shows that I don't know. I mean, I believe that people can change, but it seems like just not thinking it or not saying it isn't the answer. because that doesn't fundamentally change. I'm not saying it's good to express everything, but it seems much deeper than that to me.
Thanks, Lloyd. So one of the things I'm aware of, that the star, right? What does the star represent, right? Vaccinated, not vaccinated, Republican, Democrat, right? Anti-abortion, right? Pro-choice,
immigrant, non-immigrant,
right?
skin color,
Yes,
yeah,
right.
gender.
Wealthy, poor,
Yeah,
right? Right. Cisgender, right?
right.
And yeah, right. And so, what about the machine, right? The star off, the star on machine. So I remember reading in high school that there was a quote that said the television was the greatest invention for mind control ever invented, and I can't wait to get one in every house in my country. And I remember reading that quote of being from Adolf Hitler. I've not been able to find it again anywhere, and that concerns me. And I might have made it up. I might have thought, I might have dreamt, I read it, that that's what happened and that was true. But for me, the star off, star on machine is the same thing, and it's the TV, right? Or social media, the internet, right? The programs, America's Best Talent and the Best Cook, the kitchen, Hellfire Kitchen, and all those programs where we judge who's the best, right? And who's the worst, and who gets to move on and who gets cut, right? There's Survivor, right? You got to be the top, and you got to be the best. And if you're not, then you're dead, or you're going to die, or you're not welcome.
Yeah.
So that's a big question, I think, because I think an argument could be made that those go against discrimination and that those are meritocracy. And you could say, look, here's a person who would, a person without a star who has demonstrated they're the best. So let's celebrate their skill or talent as opposed to these more, external type things. But then the question of what makes a person the best, and if they have greater opportunities, it's going to reinforce the idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, extremely.
Christopher, were you? Yeah, thanks, Lloyd. Were you going to say something, Christopher?
Yeah. So that cycle they were going through, right, where they had that kind of figure eight thing going, it really reminded me of the way of a couple of things. One of them being kind of the way so much of whether it's TV or social media really hooks into our limbic system, and we just go on an unconscious drive. Just this is what I do. 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 Right there's a thing where are we using the technology, or is the technology using us? Kind of a thing going on. And I'm reminded particularly, I'm a very political person, so I'm reminded particularly of the outrage addiction that is used on both sides to really fuel a lot of the political energy in a really unconscious way. I'm struck by the stars coming on and off and on and off and on and off, and I'm reminded of in politics how often two different sides will use the same arguments on two different things, whether it's the same principle being applied to different situations, or it's the same critique being leveled at, say, the president. The classic example is the president's golfing or on vacation. All of a sudden, it's a bad thing when when the president from my party is not in the White House, and then it's not a problem at all when my president, the president from my party is in the White House. It's really interesting to me how that never seems to get called out in the public, but there's always golfing or vacation getting criticized, no matter who's in office.
Go ahead, Ken.
And this duality is not just about me and the other. It also happens within. I deep down inside know that there's something terribly wrong with me. I didn't do it right. I'm not good enough. I have to constantly work on myself, improve on myself in order to be better, so that I'm going to be good enough to be accepted and good enough to be lovable. So this duality, this critique goes on inside, and it affects our relationships and therefore our belonging.
Thank you.
Piggyback a little bit off of what Kent was saying there. I think it's a bit of an allegory for capitalism as a whole. We each have insecurities. I have an insecurity. I need to know that I'm good enough and you're going to think I'm enough. So if I buy this product, or, you know, wear this thing, or if my hair isn't straight enough, or if, you know, I don't have the Abercrombie shirt, which was what I dealt with in high school. Like, who had $50 for, you know, the Abercrombie shirt? Only the coolest people, only the people that had the most power, and which meant the people with the most money. So I think there's a lot of those pieces of how it's whoever is in power at a certain time normally is the one that gets to choose that. And then there's going to be people that will always take advantage of it and profiteer off of it. And I think that's a big piece of kind of, at least that's what it sounded like to me in this instance.
I agree with what you're saying there. And it made me think of how it almost doesn't matter. Like or what came to mind is that as the diameter of someone's knowledge increases, so does the circumference of their ignorance. And I think there are people out there, unlike yourself, Ken, who they don't question themselves. They're narcissists or whatever, and they're overconfident, and those are the people who are tending, I'm better. You don't have that inherently in you. And so in some respects, you could say you're at a disadvantage. You're a mark for someone. They can exploit your questioning, you know, about yourself, which is unfortunate.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's represented by the guy with the machines.
Right. Yep. Right. Here's a problem that doesn't exist that I'm going to fix for you.
Right.
I'm going to create the problem, or I'm going to capitalize on the false belief that there is a problem here, and I'm going to profit from it to my advantage. Right. One of the other things is the binary thinking of it's either you got to have a star or not have a star. There might be other options. Right. It's, you know, there's always another option in my view. This is the only either or that I'm aware of, and only because I created it. Actually, there's another one that I made and gave to a gift. It's a full liter in MKP. I gave it to him as a gift, and that was a full size or. And I love when I get to use my props, right? And so, Heather, I'm wondering if you or Byron maybe, or Walter may have something to contribute. Stephen, I see you're here with your camera off, and you're welcome to join in if you'd like.
Yeah, I would say that what it makes me think about is that we often feel a sense of connection to others because of something that we have in common. And that's what kind of can bring people together in a group. And that can be a good thing, but it's just when it's taken to the extreme and when it's taken too far that, like, oh, if you are not like us in this certain way, us versus them, we're better than you, you know, that kind of thing. So it's all, to me, about finding that balance, that it can be great to find people who are like you in certain ways and that you really connect with, but then also to value the diversity and to seek that out as well, as like that has its own value.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
What Heather said reminds me of something that Brene Brown talks about, and she says that there's we all want to belong, but the opposite of that is trying to fit in with what everybody else is doing. And it's us, or, you know, this specifically, this is something I've done more than I would like to count, is I'm going to act like everybody else does to be a part of this group, no matter what that means to who I am authentically, and who I truly am and who I want to be. And those things are, it's everywhere. It's on the TV, and before that was radio, and now it's social media and the internet. There's always ways to kind of have a way to prove yourself, to prove ourselves, and really kind of give up a piece of ourselves in the process.
Yeah, I hear you. Something to me that's interesting, and it seemed like it was depicted in the book, was that there were stars. There was an external awareness, some token that said, this is who I am, as opposed to everyone looks the same, but acknowledgement that you're different internally in some way. It seems so important to be able to demonstrate it, so that a person doesn't have to actually engage with me in order to be able to determine what class I'm in. How important that is, seems to be.
Thank you.
For me, I feel like with sort of the machines, there's the control factor, be it social media, television, any online articles, that paints a picture of what society is supposed to be like, whether it's the way you look, the way you act, the way you show up. I remember, well, just sort of some background. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. So I grew up in apartheid South Africa, where there was segregation, by race, so black, white, Indian, and what I am, which is colored, which is the mix between black and white. And I remember listening to the story that Jim read now, how at school we were all made to wear the same uniform, and which I find laughable. We were meant to wear the same school uniform, but we were classed differently. We were only allowed to go to certain schools, only allowed to travel basically in certain sections on the buses. I know in the US, some of it is quite similar. But there's constantly this machine that says we are supposed to be a certain way and act a certain way, when in truth, we are all individual. So there's certain classes that have stars, others that don't. And there's, in my mind, I'm getting this picture of how we are always pushing to attain the other instead of pushing to hold on to our own individuality and build our own esteem to a point where we don't care what is said about us, how we need to look, how we need to act, how we need to think. And listening to the story, I feel like it brings up feelings of, I would say, anger, and frustration, because if you look at how there was this capitalization, one person making all the money by playing on people's minds, whereas if the masses had to turn the tables against the machine, if I can put it that way, where's the war won? Yeah, I'll leave it at there for now.
Thanks, Byron. Thank you.
To follow, I'm curious, Byron, that you said everyone wore the same uniform. Was there a manner, an external manner other than skin color, which kind of classed people? Was there some other way that people just knew, oh, I'm in a different class, I'm not allowed to go to that? Or was it always external?
Plenty. during the period of apartheid, the ruling government or ruling party at the time, they based it, of course, on skin color. Also, when you went for what they called classing, so to decide, especially for colored people or like myself, which is mixed, there was tests done. So, for example, if they would do what they call the pencil test, so you would go to the provincial offices, they would actually stick a pencil in your hair. And if the pencil stayed there without moving, you couldn't be considered white. If the pencil slid out of your hair, then you were considered white. And also, with regards to how we were classed, they would look at how you speak. Do you speak English well enough? How is your pronunciation? Is it more sort of I don't know the correct word or the proper word to say, but I'm basically going to say it this way. So they would look at how you speak. Is it more sort of English white, or is it more of a black a dialect? And if you are familiar with South Africa at the moment, we have 11 official languages. So the dialect, even the way I speak 3 of the official languages. So I tend to switch between the 3 at times. So my accent tends to change a bit based on, which mindset I'm in at the time. But at the time that apartheid was rife, they would look at the way you spoke, the way you carried yourself, the way you dressed. There were so many things, and coming out of that process into a democratic society, there was a lot of changes that needed to take place, not only emotionally but mentally as well, in the way that people thought about things, because there was so much conditioning as well, growing up. To break that conditioning is difficult, and what I related in the story as well, at the end, there was the decision made that it doesn't matter whether we have a star or not, we are all the same, and we accept that. But it came at an expense, quite a big expense. And all it took was a change in mindset, for the Sneetches to decide. We didn't actually need the machine. We didn't need this one person controlling, how we thought and how we showed up. It was all within them at all the time. So that I'm just sort of sitting processing the relation that I'm kind of feeling into at the moment.
And thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I realized an assumption I made was the way you made it sound. It was so overt. I'm used to it being much more subliminal. We're kind of more sneaky in this country. And it was just like, to take a class test, like, oh my God, that just seems so. And if that was normal practice, like I didn't even think that was, I didn't even consider that, which, wow. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Lloyd, did you say we're more sneetchy?
Ski, or was it Sneetch or so? Yeah, so sneaky, sneetchy. I don't know.
Sneetchy.
Hey, so thank you, Jim, for today's story reading and expanding. I grew up, I was born in '67. I grew up with Dr. Seuss, and I knew that, okay, it's teaching, be fair, be kind, be non-judgmental. My daughter's 25, my son is 22. We read Dr. Seuss to them. And today I have a much greater appreciation for the depth that is in his cartoons. So that was really cool. The word that I would say that it helped me work with is we're doing a lot for polarization. I mean, this country's been polarizing for 110 years-ish, but now we're polarizing the whole world with this COVID con stuff. And the fascinating thing about that in terms of a personal experience, I sent my mom a whole bunch of information saying, don't get the friggin' vaccine. You've got these other extenuating things. Don't get the vaccine. And so I was up there for Christmas and New Year's 6 months ago. And we went to a couple different restaurants, and the one restaurant said, well, nobody can dine in unless you've got a card. I was like, you can go somewhere else. She's like, no, we'll just order and go home. And then a day later, we went somewhere else, and she had said something. And so she pulls out her card, and that time I actually looked at it. All the lettering on her card was green. So when we were doing the Sneetches and the stars were green, it was just hilarious to me because everything on my mom's card was green. I don't know if that's true of all cards, but that's the only card I've actually seen, and actually held. So I was like, give me that. And yeah, it had a green band on it, and all the letters on the front and back were all green. So the fact that the stars were green was just hilarious in terms of personal experience.
I don't think that's by accident.
I'm probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
So I don't claim to be wise enough to know the answer to that. Right. Yeah.
Something what this reminds me of, I don't know how many people saw the social network, the whole idea of the building of Facebook, and where one of the things that stood out to me was Zuckerberg was like exclusivity, like that was his goal. He saw how that was kind of this almost drug that people were drawn to. Is you create something that's exclusive, and people, before it was exclusive, they didn't want it, but as soon as you make it exclusive, people want to be in it. This inherent sense of belonging is really powerful for people. You could almost just create scarcity, create demand by creating scarcity. It's kind of scary.
It's a major thing in marketing. Like that's what I do professionally, and it's, if you make it sound like it's going to be over now, it's FOMO. It's you're directly working on getting at, which comes back full circle to what Jim was talking about. TV is a master of that, and that's how a lot of artists become as big as they are. If everybody didn't think that Banksy was special, would anybody think that Banksy's special? It's like, it's an amazing art, but it's us deciding to put the value on the thing, like it is cryptocurrency. Nobody thinks it's valuable anymore, and it's lost what, $500 billion or $500 billion or something. It'll go back up, but it goes back and forth depending on what Elon Musk gets drunk and tweets about this week. But yeah, I think that's just, it's amazing how much that's utilized in psychology and that data that we get from Facebook and Twitter and all the other social media platforms. It's a little maddening once you kind of see the matrix and look behind that, and just like, oh, this is terrifying.
Right.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, I was wondering, can I share a few words from a book, a favorite book of mine?
Sure.
It's about belonging. The book is Community, the Structure of Belonging by Peter Block. And in there, he says, we move from a punitive society to a restorative society when we shift the conversation from fear and fault and problems to gifts, generosity, and abundance. And what's coming up for me is, what are the gifts in the diversity? That's what I have.
Thank you. Yeah. And so I'm aware that might be a good segue, right, into my last question, right, which is what might we do today to counteract the impact of those harmful dysfunctional dynamics, right? And Andy Scott background on his screen there is a mural I painted. I was one of the artists that painted on a wall in Kensington here in Philadelphia. And it's the acronym for RESPECT, which was my contribution. And it's remember everyone suffers painful experiences, communicate tenderly. And Stephen has it on his picture also. That's him helping me paint. He drove in from Indiana to help paint the mural. And Patrick Shretlin and his son came down from New York to help. And there was about 15 to 20 other artists and folks who contributed to physically painting it. You know, and yeah, right. So what can we do? You know, one of the things that I'm doing is, along with several folks that are here in this room and a bunch of other folks, is we've officially created an LLC called the Spirit of Harmonious Cooperation. And we're in the process of creating an official society within MKP called the Spirit of Harmonious Cooperation. And it would be known as the SOC Society, SOHC.
You may want to tell folks what MKP is.
So the Mankind Project, right? I'm sorry, I'm just assuming, right? Heather, I believe you're aware, right, of the Mankind Project. And Byron, I've spoke about it in our groups. The other thing is I'm aware we didn't check in, and I want to make sure to leave a little time to check out, where everybody just gets to share who you are, where you're at, right? We'll turn the recording off for that piece. But I think it's important for the connection. And so the society is being developed and defined at this moment, right? And the intent is to educate, promote, and share the wisdom and skills of nonviolent communication, conflict resolution, crucial conversation, celebrating diversity, living in peace and harmony with the planet, and judicial restorative justice, you know, and other things. And we currently have a Facebook page, and I believe Ron's going to be putting that in the chat if you'd like to join us there. And yeah, if you're interested, join us. And also you can send me an email at either Jim Katona at MKP, and I'll put them in the chat, or J Katona Jr. at Gmail. I'll put them in the chat in a minute. And we have the webpage, but it's still being developed, so I'm not sharing that at the moment. And we're looking to create, you know, a presence on other social media as well, just to share the information and the education and to learn and grow together, to celebrate our diversity. And know that just as much as we're different, there's so many more ways, thousands more ways that we're similar, you know. And, you know, we are all just here walking each other home, you know. And I'd like to share some gratitude, right? And so my wife and life partner, Dawn, right, for loving me even when I'm not lovable, for the last 17 years, 15 years of which we've been married officially. And, you know, to MKP, and all the folks who are a part of that organization and I've met through that organization. Today happens to be the 23rd anniversary of the Saturday night of my New Warrior training adventure. So about this time, we were running a little late on the schedule. For those of you who know the process, we'd be enjoying our feast, our meal, our adequate dinner for Saturday night, just about now. And I'm grateful for that. And all that I've learned about myself in the last 23 years, right? I want to recognize Jerry, Gender Equity Reconciliation International. And there's some folks here on the call tonight from that organization. And it's helped me to celebrate in a deeper and profound way the feminine that lives within me, the part of me that's feminine, and to honor the part of everyone else that's feminine. And to be more respectful of those who identify in genders that I've yet to understand. And to be more open and accepting. I'm grateful for that. Christopher Odell, thank you for your vision and for your dedication and your hard work to putting this and the other summit and the conflict resolution and all that you bring to MKP. I want to recognize Art Patterson, who's a man that I met. We've been on the phone almost every single day since August in 2014. And he touches my heart in profound ways. He told me he'd be here tonight, and I'm sad that he's not. I want to bring his name into the circle. He's taught me a lot. Andy, you know, I love you, bro. Thanks. And, you know, I could go on and on and on, but I just also want to mention Don Jones, who was the chairman of MKP when I did my rookie staffing, when I staffed my first New Warrior training adventure. And he saw gold in me that I wasn't able to see in myself. And he still mentors me today from beyond the grave. He still teaches me. I'm grateful for that man. And there's too many others to list. Stephen Hovanek, right? Like, just, I'm grateful for you. And Ron, for your support here tonight, you know. I want to acknowledge two men that Charles Eisenstein wrote a book, Create the More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. And he's an MKP member, and so is David Gruder with his work around free responsibility, right? And with great freedom comes great responsibility. And are we stepping into our responsibility of our power and privilege in a good way to create the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible? And that's why those two, they kind of like crash together for me. And it's like, yeah, right? So, yeah, if anybody else has something to share, or I want to make sure we have time to check out. Thank you all for hearing me, for your grace and your mercy. I'm still as nervous now as I was when I started, and it feels good. It really does. Thank you.